The warm Georgia sun was setting as Marcus Johnson pulled into the parking lot of Wilson's grocery store. It had been a long day teaching high school mathematics, and all he wanted was to grab a few items and head home. At 34 years old, Marcus was known in his community for being a dedicated teacher, but nobody knew that this ordinary shopping trip would lead to something extraordinary. As he walked through the automatic doors, Marcus felt the cool air conditioning hit his face. The store wasn't very crowded, just a few people pushing their carts down the well-lit aisles. He grabbed a small shopping basket and pulled out his phone to check his wife's texts about what they needed for dinner. Milk, bread, and some vegetables, he muttered to himself, heading toward the dairy section. The fluorescent lights hummed above as he made his way past the colorful produce displays. That's when he first saw her. An elderly white woman was standing in front of the milk section, her hands trembling as she tried to reach for a carton on the upper shelf. She wasn't very tall, maybe around 5 feet, and her silver hair was neatly styled despite the humid Atlanta weather. What caught Marcus's attention wasn't just her struggle to reach the milk. It was the medical alert bracelet that jangled on her wrist and the tired look in her eyes. Marcus watched as she attempted again to grab the milk carton, her fingers barely brushing against it. Without thinking twice, he stepped forward. "Ma'am, would you like some help with that?" he asked, his voice gentle and warm. The woman turned, startled at first, then relieved when she saw Marcus's friendly smile. "Oh, thank you, young man. These old arms aren't what they used to be," she replied with a small laugh that turned into a weak cough. As Marcus easily reached up and grabbed the milk carton for her, he noticed her shopping cart. It was filled with low-sodium foods, fresh vegetables, and several types of vitamins. The kind of shopping list that spoke of serious health concerns. "Would you like help with anything else?" Marcus offered, noticing how she leaned heavily on her shopping cart for support. The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah Collins, hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Actually, if it's not too much trouble, I'm having one of my bad days," she admitted, touching the medical alert bracelet on her wrist. As they walked through the store together, Sarah picked up a few more items while Marcus helped her reach things on higher shelves. She was easy to talk to, and before long, she was telling him about her grandchildren and her years working as a nurse at the local hospital. "3 times a week, I have to go to dialysis," Sarah shared as they approached the checkout counter. "It takes so much out of me, but you keep going, right? What else can you do?" Marcus helped her place her items on the conveyor belt, noticing how her hands shook as she reached for her wallet. The cashier, a young girl with bright red hair, greeted Sarah by name, clearly a regular customer. "Let me help you to your car," Marcus offered after they paid for their groceries. The sun had set completely now, and the parking lot was dark except for the yellow glow of the streetlights. Sarah's old blue Toyota was parked in a handicapped spot near the entrance. As Marcus loaded her groceries into the trunk, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. "You know, not many people would take the time to help a stranger these days. What's your name, young man?" "Marcus Johnson, ma'am. I teach math at Clayton High." "Well, Marcus Johnson, you've made this old lady's day much easier," Sarah said, patting his arm. "God bless you." As Marcus watched Sarah's car pull away, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something special about this encounter. He headed back into the store to finish his own shopping, completely unaware that this simple act of kindness would soon lead to a decision that would change both their lives forever. That night, as Marcus drove home with his own groceries, Sarah's words about dialysis kept playing in his mind. He thought about how tired she looked, how her hands shook, and how despite it all, she still managed to smile and joke. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would touch not only their lives but inspire an entire community. A week after their first meeting at Wilson's grocery store, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Sarah Collins and her struggle with kidney disease. That Tuesday afternoon, while grading math papers in his classroom, he was surprised to see her familiar face in the school parking lot, slowly walking toward the main entrance. Sarah had come to bring him a homemade apple pie as a thank you gift for his help at the store. The school secretary had guided her to his classroom, where she found Marcus surrounded by geometry worksheets and half-empty coffee cups. "Mrs. Collins, what brings you here?" Marcus stood up quickly, clearing some papers from a chair so she could sit down. He noticed how tired she looked, even more than the last time. "Please call me Sarah," she smiled, carefully placing the pie on his desk. I just came from my dialysis appointment at the clinic down the street. I thought I'd stop by and properly thank you for your kindness last week. As Sarah settled into the chair, she began to share more about her life. She had been a nurse for 40 years at Atlanta General Hospital, helping countless patients until their kidney disease forced her to retire early. Now, at 68, she spent 3 days every week connected to a dialysis machine for 4 hours at a time. It's like having a part-time job, except this job makes you feel awful, Sarah explained, trying to make light of her situation. The machine does what my kidneys can't. Cleans my blood. But it's exhausting. Some days, I can barely walk from my bedroom to the kitchen. Marcus listened carefully as Sarah described her daily struggles. She lived alone since her husband passed away 5 years ago. Her only daughter, Jennifer, lived in California with her family and couldn't visit often due to work and her own children's schedules. The hardest part isn't the dialysis, Sarah continued, her voice growing softer. It's the waiting. I've been on the kidney transplant list for 4 years now. They say finding a match is especially hard because of my blood type and age. She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a photo of her grandchildren, twins who had just turned 7. I keep fighting because of them. I want to see them grow up, maybe even attend their high school graduation. But some days, it feels like time is running out. Marcus noticed how Sarah's hands trembled as she put her phone away, the same trembling he had seen at the grocery store. She explained that it was a side effect of her condition, her body struggling to maintain the right balance of minerals because her kidneys weren't working properly. You know what's funny? Sarah said, looking around his classroom. I used to be terrible at math, but now I'm constantly calculating numbers. My blood pressure, potassium levels, fluid intake. Everything has to be measured and monitored. As they talked, students began filing past the classroom for afternoon activities. Several waved at Marcus through the window, and he waved back. Sarah watched this interaction with a warm smile. You must be a wonderful teacher, she said. The kids seem to really like you. I try my best, Marcus replied modestly. Teaching math isn't just about numbers. It's about helping students believe in themselves. Before leaving, Sarah handed Marcus a small card with her phone number. If you ever want to share this pie with me, give me a call. Just make sure it's not on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Those are my dialysis days. After Sarah left, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the card in his hands. He thought about how this woman had spent her entire career helping others as a nurse, and now when she needed help the most, she was stuck waiting for a miracle. That evening, instead of grading papers, Marcus found himself researching kidney donation on his laptop. He learned that healthy people could live normal lives with just one kidney. He read about the evaluation process, recovery time, and success rates of living donor transplants. As he drove home that night, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marcus felt something shifting inside him. He didn't know it yet, but this was the moment when a simple act of helping someone reach for a milk carton would begin to transform into something much bigger, a decision that would change not only Sarah's life but his own as well. The clock showed 2:47 a.m., but Marcus Johnson was still wide awake. He sat at his kitchen table, the soft glow of his laptop lighting up his worried face. His wife Lisa found him there, just like she had for the past 3 nights. Still reading about kidney donation? Lisa asked softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. She was wearing her favorite blue pajamas and carrying 2 cups of chamomile tea. Marcus nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. I just can't stop thinking about Sarah. Did you know that people can die waiting for a kidney? The average wait time is 5 to 7 years. She's already been waiting for 4. Lisa sat down next to her husband, sliding one of the teacups toward him. Are you seriously thinking about donating your kidney to her? Her voice was gentle but concerned. I've been doing research, Marcus said, turning his laptop so Lisa could see. Healthy people can live normal lives with 1 kidney. The surgery is safe, and the recovery time is about 6 to 8 weeks. But Lisa had her worries. What about your teaching job? Your basketball coaching? Our plans to start a family soon? She reached for his hand. Marcus, I love your big heart, but this is a huge decision. Marcus squeezed her hand back. I know it's crazy. She's a stranger I met at a grocery store. But something inside me keeps saying this is the right thing to do. The next morning at Clayton High School, Marcus had trouble focusing on teaching his algebra class. Between explaining equations, his mind kept drifting to Sarah's trembling hands and tired eyes. During lunch break, he called the local transplant center to ask some questions. That afternoon, he visited his parents' house. His mother was cooking dinner while his father watched the news in the living room. "You want to do what?" His mother nearly dropped the spoon she was holding when Marcus told them about his idea. "Baby, are you sure about this?" His father muted the TV and leaned forward in his recliner. "Son, I understand wanting to help, but this is a major surgery. There are risks involved." "I know, Dad," Marcus said, sitting down on the couch. "But I'm healthy, I'm young, and I can help save someone's life. How many people get that chance?" His mother wiped her hands on her apron and sat next to him. "What does Lisa think about all this?" "She's worried, just like you are," Marcus admitted. "But she also understands why I feel I need to do this." Later that week, Marcus met Sarah for coffee at a small cafe near the school. She was having one of her better days, the day after dialysis when she had the most energy. "I've been thinking about something," Marcus said carefully, watching Sarah stir her decaf coffee. "I want to get tested to see if I could be a kidney donor for you." Sarah's spoon clattered against the cup. "What? No, Marcus, I couldn't possibly." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's too much to ask. We barely know each other." "You're not asking, I'm offering," Marcus said firmly. "I've done my research. I've talked to my family. I want to help if I can." Sarah's hands were shaking more than usual as she reached across the table to touch his arm. "Do you understand what you're saying? This is a major surgery. There could be complications." Marcus nodded. "I know, but I also know that you deserve a chance to see those grandkids of yours grow up." As they sat there in the quiet cafe, both of them felt the weight of this moment. Outside, life went on as normal. Cars passed by, people walked their dogs, students hurried to after-school activities. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. A man was offering part of himself to save a stranger's life. That evening, Marcus filled out the online donor evaluation form on the transplant center's website. His hands weren't shaking like Sarah's, but his heart was beating fast as he clicked the submit button. He knew there would be more conversations, more tests, more questions to answer. He knew some people would think he was crazy, but for the first time since meeting Sarah at the grocery store, he felt completely at peace with his decision. The waiting room at Atlanta Transplant Center was quiet except for the soft sound of a morning talk show playing on the wall-mounted TV. Marcus sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, filling out what felt like his 100th medical form. Next to him, Lisa flipped through an old magazine, trying to hide her nervousness. "Mr. Johnson?" A nurse in blue scrubs called his name. "We're ready for your first round of tests." Marcus squeezed Lisa's hand before standing up. This was the beginning of a long journey, the initial screening to see if he could be a kidney donor for Sarah. The process would take several weeks and involve many different tests. First was the blood test. The nurse, whose name tag read Angela, smiled warmly as she prepared the needles. "You're doing a wonderful thing," she said, tying the rubber band around his arm. Not many people would consider donating a kidney to someone they just met. Marcus watched as 6 different tubes filled with his blood. Each one would test for different things: blood type, tissue matching, diseases, and other factors that would determine if he could be a donor. "Now for the fun part," Angela said after finishing with the blood samples. "You'll need to collect your urine for the next 24 hours. Marcus couldn't help but laugh when she handed him a large orange container. "Really? The whole day?" "Welcome to the glamorous world of medical testing," Angela winked. The next few hours were filled with more tests. Doctors checked his blood pressure, listened to his heart, took chest x-rays, and asked endless questions about his health history. By lunchtime, Marcus felt like a human pincushion. During his lunch break, he called Sarah to let her know how things were going. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting by the phone. "Marcus, I still can't believe you're doing this." Sarah's voice was filled with emotion. "How are the tests going?" "So far, so good," he replied, taking a bite of his sandwich in the hospital cafeteria, "though I never knew there were so many ways to check if someone is healthy." That evening, when Marcus returned to school to check on his substitute teacher's notes, His principal, Dr. Thompson, called him into her office. "Marcus, I heard about what you're planning to do," she said, gesturing for him to sit down. "The school board and I have discussed it, and we want you to know that your job will be protected during your recovery if you end up being a match." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes. He hadn't expected this kind of support. "Thank you," he managed to say. "That means a lot." Over the next few days, more test results started coming in. The first big news arrived on a Tuesday morning. His blood type matched Sarah's. It wasn't a guarantee that he could be a donor, but it was an important first step. The tissue typing test results came next. This was crucial because it would show if Sarah's body would accept his kidney. Marcus was in the middle of teaching when his phone buzzed with the message. He waited until his students were working on practice problems before checking it. "Tissue typing shows compatibility. Please schedule next round of tests." His hands shook as he forwarded the message to Sarah. Within minutes, she replied with a single heart emoji, followed by, "God bless you, Marcus Johnson." That night, Marcus sat with Lisa on their back porch, watching the sunset. The spring air was warm, and somewhere in the distance, crickets were starting to chirp. "The doctors said the next tests will check my kidney function," he told her. "They need to make sure my kidneys are strong enough that I can live with just one." Lisa rested her head on his shoulder. "You know what amazes me?" she said softly. "A month ago, we didn't even know Sarah existed. Now we're praying every night that your kidney will be a match for her." Marcus smiled, thinking about how a simple trip to the grocery store had led to this moment. The testing process wasn't over. There were still many hurdles to clear. But with each passing day, the possibility of helping Sarah live a better life became more real. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, Marcus felt a deep sense of purpose. Whatever happened next, he knew in his heart that he had made the right choice by starting this journey. 2 months after the initial tests, Marcus sat in Dr. Reynolds' office at the Atlanta Transplant Center, listening carefully as the transplant surgeon explained what would happen next. The walls were covered with medical certificates and diagrams of kidneys. Lisa sat next to him, taking notes on her phone. "All your tests came back excellent, Mr. Johnson," Dr. Reynolds said, smiling as he looked through the thick file on his desk. "Your kidneys are healthy, your blood pressure is perfect, and your overall health is outstanding. You're officially approved to be Mrs. Collins' donor." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Even though he had been hoping for this news, hearing it officially made it feel more real. "So what happens now?" he asked. "We'll schedule the surgery for 3 weeks from now," Dr. Reynolds explained. "This will give everyone time to prepare. You'll need to take 6 to 8 weeks off work for recovery." In the next room, Sarah was receiving the same news from another doctor. When their appointments finished, they met in the waiting room. Sarah immediately pulled Marcus into a tight hug, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how I'll ever thank you enough," she whispered. The next few weeks were busy with preparations. Marcus spent extra time at school, preparing detailed lesson plans for his substitute teacher. His students made him get well cards when they heard about his upcoming surgery. "Mr. Johnson, you're like a real-life superhero," one student wrote in bright purple marker. At home, Lisa rearranged their bedroom to make it more comfortable for Marcus's recovery. She bought extra pillows and moved his favorite chair next to the bed. Their spare room was prepared for Marcus's mother, who would stay with them for the first week after surgery to help out. Sarah's daughter Jennifer flew in from California with the twins. She visited Marcus and Lisa for dinner one evening, bringing photos of her family and stories about her mother. "Before the kidney disease, Mom was always the one taking care of everyone else," Jennifer said, showing them pictures of Sarah in her nursing uniform. "It's been hard for her to be the one needing help." The day before the surgery, Marcus had his final day at school until recovery. His students surprised him with a small party during lunch break. They had made a huge banner that read, "Get well soon, Mr. J," in colorful letters. That evening, Marcus and Lisa went to church. Their pastor said a special prayer for both Marcus and Sarah, and many congregation members came up afterward to offer their support. "The whole church will be praying for both of you tomorrow," the pastor assured them. Back at home, Marcus packed his hospital bag while Lisa watched from the doorway. He put in comfortable pajamas, his favorite book, headphones, and a few family photos. "Are you scared?" Lisa asked softly. Marcus paused, thinking about her question. A little, he admitted. But not about the surgery. I'm more worried about Sarah. I really want this to work for her. They went to bed early that night, knowing they had to be at the hospital by 6 o'clock a.m. As they lay in the darkness, Lisa reached for Marcus's hand. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. You're giving someone a second chance at life. That's incredible. Marcus squeezed her hand back, thinking about the journey that had led to this moment. From a chance meeting at a grocery store to tomorrow's surgery, it all felt like it was meant to be. Just before falling asleep, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Thank you for being my angel. See you tomorrow. God bless you. Marcus smiled at the message, feeling peaceful despite the big day ahead. In just a few hours, he would be in the operating room, giving one of his kidneys to someone who had started as a stranger but had become like family. As sleep began to take over, Marcus thought about how sometimes the biggest moments in life come from the smallest decisions, like choosing to help someone reach for a carton of milk. Tomorrow would change both his and Sarah's lives forever, and he was ready. The morning of the surgery arrived with a gentle sunrise. Marcus and Lisa pulled into the hospital parking lot at exactly 5:45 a.m. The air was crisp, and the hospital building cast long shadows in the early morning light. In the pre-operation area, nurses bustled around, checking vital signs and preparing both Marcus and Sarah for surgery. They were in separate rooms, but just a few doors apart. Marcus lay in his hospital bed, already changed into a light blue surgical gown, while a nurse named Maria started his IV. Your blood pressure is perfect, Maria said warmly. That's a good sign. You must not be too nervous. Lisa sat beside Marcus's bed, holding his hand. She was trying to look brave, but he could see the worry in her eyes. His parents arrived a few minutes later, his mother immediately coming over to kiss his forehead. My brave boy, she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. Down the hall, Sarah was also being prepared for surgery. Her daughter Jennifer was with her, and the twins had made her a colorful card with "Get well soon, Grandma," written in wobbly letters. At 7:30 a.m., Dr. Reynolds came to check on both patients. He visited Marcus first. Are you ready to do this? The doctor asked, reviewing Marcus's charts one final time. More ready than ever, Marcus replied with a confident smile. The surgical team explained the process. Marcus would go into surgery first. The operation to remove his kidney would take about 3 hours. Then, immediately after, Sarah's surgery would begin to transplant the kidney into her body. Just before they wheeled him to the operating room, the hospital allowed Marcus to stop by Sarah's room. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw him. Marcus, Sarah reached for his hand. I'm still amazed by your kindness. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Just focus on getting better, okay? I'll see you on the other side. The operating room was bright and cold. Marcus looked up at the large lights above him while the anesthesiologist prepared his medications. The surgical team moved around him with practiced efficiency, checking equipment and preparing instruments. We're going to start the anesthesia now, the anesthesiologist said kindly. Can you count backward from 100 for me? 100, 99, 98. Marcus's voice grew fainter as the medication took effect. His last thought before drifting off was a prayer for both himself and Sarah. While Marcus was in surgery, his family and Sarah's waited together in the hospital's surgical waiting room. Lisa and Jennifer sat next to each other, sharing coffee and stories. The twins played quietly with coloring books, occasionally asking when they could see their grandmother. 3 hours passed slowly. Finally, Dr. Reynolds emerged in his surgical scrubs, still wearing his cap. Marcus's surgery was successful, he announced to the relieved families. We've recovered a healthy kidney, and we're preparing Mrs. Collins for her surgery now. Lisa burst into tears of relief, hugging Jennifer tightly. Marcus's mother began praying quietly, thanking God for watching over her son. They moved Marcus to the recovery room, where he slowly began waking up from the anesthesia. Lisa was allowed to sit with him as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Did everything go okay? He asked groggily, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything went perfectly, Lisa assured him, stroking his hand. They're working on Sarah now. As the afternoon sun filled the recovery room window, Marcus dozed while the nurses monitored his vital signs. Down the hall, Sarah's surgery continued, her body receiving the precious gift that would change her life. By evening, both surgeries were complete. Though they were in different rooms, both Marcus and Sarah were recovering well. The medical team was optimistic. The kidney had been healthy and strong, and Sarah's body showed no immediate signs of rejection. That night, as both patients rested under the careful watch of the hospital staff, their families celebrated quietly in the waiting room. A simple act of kindness that began in a grocery store had transformed into something miraculous. The gift of life from one person to another. 1 week after the surgery, Marcus sat in a recliner by his bedroom window, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes outside. His mother had just helped him take a short walk around the house, his third walk of the day, as recommended by the doctors. The recovery was harder than he expected. Even simple things like getting out of bed or walking to the bathroom required effort, but each day brought small improvements. The surgical pain was slowly fading, replaced by a feeling of accomplishment. "Your latest blood tests look perfect," Lisa told him, reading an email from the hospital on her phone. "And Sarah's new kidney is working great. Her body is accepting it well." Though they were recovering in separate homes, Marcus and Sarah texted each other daily. She sent him a photo of her first post-surgery meal without dietary restrictions, a small bowl of ice cream that she hadn't been allowed to eat for years because of the kidney disease. "First ice cream in 4 years. Thank you, Marcus," the message read. Marcus's students kept him entertained with daily updates from school. They made a video diary of what they were learning and sent it to him through their substitute teacher. One student even wrote a rap song about kidney donation, which made Marcus laugh despite his sore stomach. 2 weeks into recovery, Sarah's daughter Jennifer brought the twins to visit Marcus. The children were fascinated by his surgical scar. "Did it hurt?" 7-year-old Emily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "A little," Marcus admitted, "but knowing your grandma is getting better makes it worth it." Her brother Tommy gave Marcus a handmade card. Inside, he had drawn a picture of Marcus in a superhero cape, with the words, "Thank you for saving our grandma," written in crayon. The local newspaper heard about their story and sent a reporter to interview both Marcus and Sarah. The reporter was amazed that they had only met 3 months ago at a grocery store. "What made you decide to donate your kidney to a stranger?" the reporter asked Marcus. Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes you just know in your heart what the right thing to do is. When I learned about Sarah's struggle, I couldn't ignore it. We may have been strangers then, we're family now." 4 weeks after the surgery, Marcus had his first follow-up appointment at the hospital. His doctor was pleased with his recovery. In the waiting room afterward, he ran into Sarah, who was there for her own checkup. The change in her appearance was remarkable. Her skin had a healthy color, her hands weren't shaking anymore, and her eyes were bright and clear. She no longer looked exhausted like she had during their first meeting at the grocery store. "Look at you," Sarah exclaimed, carefully hugging him. "You're walking so well now." "Look at yourself," Marcus replied. "You look amazing." They sat together in the hospital cafe, sharing stories about their recovery. Sarah told him how she no longer needed dialysis, how she could eat normal foods again, and how she had energy to play with her grandchildren. "I went to the grocery store yesterday," Sarah said with a smile, "and this time I could reach the milk by myself." 6 weeks after the surgery, Marcus returned to school. His students had decorated his classroom with welcome back signs and blue and green ribbons, the colors for organ donation awareness. During his first class, he shared his experience, hoping to teach his students about the importance of helping others. "Mr. Johnson," one student raised her hand. "Do you regret donating your kidney?" Marcus looked around at his students' faces, thinking about everything that had happened since that day at the grocery store. He thought about Sarah's renewed health, her happy grandchildren, and the incredible bond their families had formed. "Not for a single moment," he answered truthfully. "Sometimes the best decisions in life are the ones that seem crazy at first, but feel absolutely right in your heart." That evening, he received a group photo from Sarah. She was surrounded by her family at a restaurant, celebrating her first dinner out in years. Her smile was radiant, and the caption read, "This is what a second chance at life looks like. Thank you, Marcus." The Wilson's grocery store parking lot was decorated with blue and green balloons. A banner hung above the entrance reading, "Celebrating 1 year of new life." It was exactly 1 year since Marcus Johnson had donated his kidney to Sarah Collins, and they chose to celebrate at the place where their remarkable story began. Marcus stood near the store entrance, now fully recovered and healthy, greeting people as they arrived. Sarah was beside him, looking years younger than she had that day when she struggled to reach for the milk carton. Her daughter Jennifer and the twins had flown in from California for this special celebration. "Can you believe it's been a year already?" Sarah asked, squeezing Marcus's hand. She was wearing a t-shirt that read, "My hero was a stranger," with today's date printed below it. The store's manager had helped them organize this event, which was part celebration and part awareness campaign for organ donation. Local TV stations sent reporters, and people from the community came to show their support. Marcus's students from Clayton High School performed a special song they had written about organ donation. The twins, now 8 years old, joined in the chorus, making everyone laugh with their enthusiastic dancing. Dr. Reynolds from the Transplant Center gave a short speech about the importance of living donors. "Because of Marcus's selfless act," he said, "not only did Sarah get a new kidney, but 20 other people in our community have signed up to be living donors. One act of kindness created a ripple effect that will save many more lives." Sarah's daughter Jennifer spoke next, her voice full of emotion. "A year ago, my mother could barely play with her grandchildren for 10 minutes without getting exhausted. Yesterday, she spent the whole day at the park with them. Mr. Johnson didn't just save my mother's life, he gave our whole family a second chance at making memories together." The celebration included educational booths about organ donation, free health screenings, and information about living donor programs. Marcus and Sarah sat at a table together, sharing their story with anyone who wanted to listen. "The amazing thing," Marcus told one visitor, "is that I didn't lose anything by giving Sarah my kidney. I gained a whole new family." During the celebration, an elderly man approached their table. He had tears in his eyes as he explained that he had been on the kidney transplant waiting list for 2 years. "Your story gave me hope," he said. "Last week, my nephew got tested to see if he could be my donor. We're waiting for the results." Lisa, who was now 7 months pregnant with Marcus's first child, watched her husband talking to people about organ donation. She remembered how worried she had been a year ago, and now she couldn't be prouder of his decision. As the afternoon sun began to set, Marcus's mother brought out a large cake decorated with a picture of a kidney made of frosting. Everyone laughed at the unusual design, but it seemed perfect for the occasion. Before cutting the cake, Sarah asked for everyone's attention. "1 year ago," she began, her voice strong and clear, "I was slowly dying. My kidneys were failing, and my hope was fading. Then God sent me an angel in the dairy aisle." She wiped away tears as she continued. "Marcus didn't just give me a kidney, he showed me that there are still people in this world who will help strangers simply because it's the right thing to do." Marcus stepped forward and hugged Sarah gently. "We're not strangers anymore," he reminded her with a smile. The evening ended with a group photo of both families together. Marcus and Lisa, Sarah and Jennifer, the twins, and all their extended family members who had supported them through the journey. They stood in front of the store's entrance, right where their story began. As people began leaving the celebration, Marcus noticed a young woman helping an elderly man reach for something on a high shelf inside the store. He smiled, knowing that acts of kindness, both big and small, happen every day. That night, as Marcus drove home with Lisa, she asked him, "What do you want to tell our baby about this when they're older?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering, "I'll tell them that sometimes the biggest adventures in life start with the smallest choices, and that helping others isn't just something we do, it's who we become."